everyone, this is my second book talk for this blog, and for this one we're going to talk about One Last Word, Wisdom from the Harlem Renaissance by Nikki Grimes. So the first thing that I want to talk about is who Nikki Grimes is. She's an African-American poet who is very well known and doesn't only do poetry. She has a couple chapter books out about a girl named Diamond, and she is mainly known for her poetry. She was born and raised in New York City, and she began composing poetry and verse at the age of 6 and has been writing ever since. She has won multiple awards, including the Coretta Scott King Award and many more for her work, not only in poetry but also in chapter books as well. So with this book, we are going to talk about a variety of topics, but the first one we are going to talk about is the thought of counter narratives and what they are and how this book represents that. So again, like I said earlier in the other blog, I have this article, Counter Storytelling Through Graphic Life Writing. It is on my resource tab. Please go check that out so that you can find this PDF version of this article. It's a very great resource. So Elizabeth Marshall, the author of this article, defines counter story as a method of telling the stories of those people whose experiences are not often told, i.e. those on the margins of society. The counter story is also a tool for exposing, analyzing, and challenging the majority stories of racial privilege. So, with this book, we are going to talk about how this Nikki Grimes used poetry as a way or a method to tell stories of those whose experiences may not always be told or have the opportunity to be told. I love this book. I'll start off by saying that because I love the Harlem Renaissance, and I think that it's not taught as much as it should be, because the other day I asked my parents, hey, you know Langston Hughes and this poem that he wrote and blah blah blah, and my mom was like, who's Langston Hughes? And it just struck me because he's my favorite poet and my favorite poet from the Harlem Renaissance. That being said, we're going to start off by saying this book has several parts to it. First of all, it talks about the poetry form that it was written in, and the poetry form is Golden Shovel. And Golden Shovel, the idea of a golden shovel, from the words of Nikki Grimes herself, is to take a short poem in its entirety or a line from that poem, that's called striking a line, and create a new poem using the words from the original. So, and then you arrange them in the right margin. So she takes a famous poem or famous writer from the Harlem Renaissance and puts it there, and then she either takes a chunk of it, or she takes the whole poem and writes a golden shovel poem on either a similar topic or something completely different. It's really cool because in this book she talks about the Harlem Renaissance. She has a little snippet and how she says the Harlem Renaissance was one of the most remarkable periods of artistic growth and exploration in American history. This era followed the Great Migration, when millions of African Americans left the South in search of a better life. Many of them settled in Harlem, where they finally felt free to express themselves and speak their minds without fear. And one of the ways they did so was through the arts. These were the heady days of such luminaries as James Weldon Johnson, Josephine Baker, and artist Aaron Douglas. Wow. She also talks about how when she was 13 years old, she read poetry aloud in front of an audience for the first time. This event took place at the County Cullen Library in New York City, a local branch named after one of the leading poets of the Harlem Renaissance. So she grew up loving Langston Hughes, County Cullen, Paul Laurence Dunbar, and it really just sparked this book for her. So it's really cool to hear from the author herself and her inspiration. I'm going to go ahead and read the author's note because I really like it. Mother to Son is one of the best known and best loved poems by Langston Hughes. For years I thought the poem was titled The Crystal Stair, because the phrase, no crystal stair, repeated twice in the poem is one that lingers in my memory. Life for me, wrote Hughes, ain't been no crystal stair. I could say the same. I'm sure that's one of the reasons this poem is so dear to me. We live in a time when life is hard for many people, yet there is reason to hope and to dig deep for the strength hidden inside of us. That is the message I take from Hughes' poem, and from all the other poems and poets included in this collection. That is also the message I explore in my own poems, inspired by these wonderful wordsmiths of the Harlem Renaissance. So right there, we can already tell that this is a counter story, that she is taking people who have been hurt or mistreated or haven't had a voice and giving them a voice. So for example, since we just talked about Mother to Son, we are going to read hers. Hold on. Okay. I love this one. It's probably one of my favorites. Mother, and so this is how she sets it up. One side, Mother to Son. The other side, Lessons by Nikki Grime. Okay, so if it's not bolded, so for example, in this one, you can see that the first chunk is bolded, so then she'll use that. If it is not bolded, nothing is bolded in the poem, she's going to use the whole poem. Alright, bear with me, this is a long poem. Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Well, son, I'll tell you. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, I's been a-climbin' on, and reachin' landin's, and turnin' corners, and sometimes goin' in the dark, where there ain't been no light. So, boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps, 'cause you find it's kinda harder. Don't you fall now, for I's still goin', honey. I still climbin', and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So, very impactful poem right there. So that was Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Now we're going to read Lessons by Nikki Grime. That is going to take every single word, and it's going to have that at the very end. See? Well, son, I'll tell you. And it's going to be at the very end. So I'll read this one. Lessons by Nikki Grime. Withered and wise, I might as well sift memory for the hard lessons you, my son, most need to learn. Though how I'll choose which stories to tell, well, I'll just share a few with you. I'll roll out the years of my life, step carefully looking out for Daddy, who'd drink, then try to skim me, 6 ways from Sunday. Lord, I ain't had it easy. From birth, my days have been choked with an endless rope of no bread in the pantry, no meat, no crystal slipper like the one Cinderella left on the stair. Once Sheriff pounded on our door. It's day before Christmas, and he had come, waving a notice to lock us out. Words sharp as tacks. I prayed under my breath, welcomed him in with tears and kindness. Notice went missing, never did find it. Work was hard to come by for our kind, and I scrubbed floors till my palms were beds for splinters. Threw my back out one year and had to sleep on wooden boards. The only way to eat his muscles strained and torn. Still come morn, I was glad for work and reason to get up. Home was nothing but 2 rooms and a pull-out bed, though there were worse places. At least we had cupboards with a little something inside. No steak on the table or rich man's carpet neath our feet, but still, we kept the heat on. And we throw dance parties for rent when the money got tight, push back the sofa and clear the floor. Truth? Life can be sadder than a willow-stripped bear. Empty pockets turn you inside out, but son, don't mind what's missing. Count all that's free. Friendship, laughter, all the love your heart can carry, and time. Count time. Busted heart near took me out of here, 'cept I seen too stubborn to leave ahead of the plans I been making to see you fully grown and a-climbin' your own stair. Till then, best I just keep on. Life's stair twists, rises, scrapes the sky, and there's light ahead worth reachin'. Aches or no, year by year, I clear the landings. Son, Them nights you serenade me off-key and spin me 'cross the floor turning. My smile on help me round rough corners. Last month, power shut off again, and I bumped around scrambling for matches. Sometimes I light birthday candles for you, can get going with a good cry 'cause you're scared. I started singing Happy Birthday to me like the lights are just out so the candles can shine in the dark. Hate going without power, but what if we lived where women got no rights? Kids work the mines. There are worse things than no lights. Ain't you heard your grandma's stories? She been down south, back when folks like us had no chance to vote or walk free, even in the daylight. A body gets tired climbing, so you rest every once in a while. Hear me, boy? Take a few deep breaths so you don't collapse along the way. You watch how I pace myself, how I turn stubborn instead of turning back. Went to Washington once, don't expect you'd remember. You were just a peanut then. The minute I set foot on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, down came hot tears streaking my cheeks, falling on my collar, all because Mr. Lincoln was the one saw to it you and me could plan our own steps. Didn't always like school, 'cause this one girl, stocky as you, would snatch my books and run till she finds a mud puddle to drop them in. Life, it's full of mean people, but also kinder ones, who clean your books before the mud dries hard. No matter what, don't let a few mean people shake you till your young dreams lose their feathers and fall. Hide those baby dreams in the cage of your heart for now. Your mama's got a surprise for you. Withered as I am, I's got a dream or two still. An itch my heart keeps scratching, going after like a bee on the hunt for honey. Life's stairway got dips, spirals. I's dizzy sometimes, footsore and faint. Still, long as there's breath in me, I'll be climbing. I feel the tug of tomorrow, and grab hold of the railing of life. Can't guess what's left for me to find? Do be, but hear me, son, I'm climbing on, and I ain't leaving you behind. We been bred of sturdy stuff, and no rough times will stop us. Don't need no crystal slipper to reach the top of the stair. And there's this illustration of her and her son on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. So for this one, it was a long one because she chose the whole poem. But Langston Hughes' poem is mother to son. So it's as the mother was writing to the son to keep going, to keep climbing, no matter what life throws at you. Lessons is also about a mother teaching her son that even though life is hard, there is always something around the corner, and you just need to keep climbing and be stubborn and appreciate what you've got. And so they're similar in a way, but they have their own creative freedom. Langston Hughes definitely has his own style that not a lot of people can repeat. Same with Nikki Grimes. So she pulls from each one. So as far as characters and settings, there's not, every poem has its own character. Like in these two poems, it was a mother and a son. And it was in Lessons by Nikki Grimes, there was a lot of reference to Cinderella, bad men, mean bullies, and just a lot. So each one has their own. But as far as poets, Langston Hughes is used a couple times. There's also Clara Ann Thompson and Jean Toomer, just very famous poets of the Harlem Renaissance. So the settings, most of these settings have to do with just a place where they're mistreated, they feel hurt by society, they feel hurt by a certain race, and they are just telling each other that together they'll be strong. But again, the settings change from poem to poem. How did these characters challenge and dismantle this oppression and or stereotype? So this poem that I chose, the mother talks about all of the struggles that she had to deal with when she was younger, and she knows that her baby boy is going through similar things to a certain extent, and how no matter what they go through, there is always something brighter on the other side, and that they have to keep climbing and they have to be stubborn and don't let anyone knock them down. So that is kind of like a mantra that is not only in these 2 poems, but throughout the book. I would love to read another one to you. It's a little long, so I may cut it a little bit short. But this one is called, it's really good. Okay, so this is the poem. It's called Life and Death by Clara Ann Thompson. We live, and how intense is life, so full of stress, so full of strife, so full of hopes, so full of fears, of joy and sorrow, smiles and tears. And oh, how fruitless is this quest, unless we're striving for the best. We die, and how sad is death, how sad when we relinquish breath, when all life's glory slips away, and leaves us but a mass of clay. How sad, and oh, how dark the night, unless we found eternal light. This of our brother we can say, we meet to honor him today. Because he fought life's battle well, he stood where heaviest missiles fell. Oft wounded in the crucial test, still ever striving for the best. Still striving he has fallen now, we've placed the laurel on his brow, while in our hearts we wonder why God called this man so soon to die. We wonder, oh, how blind are we, his rugged path we could not see. We only saw his wealth and fame, his noble station, honored name. We need not envy him his place, who seeks to lift a trodden race. God knew how hard and well he'd fought, the noble deeds his hands had wrought. God heard the deep sighs of his breast, he heard and gave the warrior rest. And shall we weep and say, 'tis night, when he has found eternal life? So I like this poem because it talks about grieving and death from a spiritual standpoint, and that really hits home with me. And I just never thought about it like this. But Dickie Grimes takes, we live in how intense is life, so full of stress, so full of strife, so full of hopes, so full of fears, of joy and sorrow, smiles and tears. And oh, how fruitless is this quest, unless we're striving for the best. She's taking this chunk of the poem, and as you can see, it's a small chunk of the poem. And she creates this beautiful poem called Crucible of Champions. And I'll just read it and then I'll talk about it. Okay. Jamar. The evening news never spares us. Tune in and we hear. If you're a boy and you're black, you live with a target on your back. We each take it in and shiver, one sharp-bladed question hanging overhead. How long do I get to walk this earth? The smell of death is too intense. And so we bury the thought, because the future is ours, right? We get to choose. Well, we choose life. That was Jamar's. This is Dina. Stupid is the word that stalks me. I'm anything but, so I see it inside. Even on a good day, I'm full of an anger that burns my breath. Why? It's all because of my diagnosed dyslexia. Ask me to read aloud, I stress. Whenever the teacher calls on me in class, I stutter. So most folks summarize that my head is hollow. Actually, it's quite full. My words and letters simply switch places. They've got a mind of their own. I call that reason enough for strife. Helena. I've never met a marine biologist, so what makes me think I could be one? My head is full of fantasies that don't fit other people's ideas of what's possible. They tell me I should squeeze my hopes into a miniature box of their design, but I'm not so inclined. Their infinitesimal perceptions are not for me. I'm full as a piñata, stuffed with daring and delectable dreams of all I can truly be. There's hardly room for doubts, for fears. Damien. No one cuts you any slack if you're a boy, especially of a particular hue, and you decide to find your joy in ballet. Never mind, that's it, as tough as any sport, and gives you a perfect place to pack whatever sorrow shadows you. Flex, point, leap, and you're all smiles before you know it. Dance is demanding, too, and the strength it takes would leave most jocks in tears. Cora. Lips zipped, I fight to keep silent, to fit in, and when I speak, I whisper. It's silly, I know, but oh, don't the boys love it? Besides, it's how the popular girls behave. It's tiresome, though even fruitless, to pretend to be somebody you're not. Like Mom says, life is too short, better to take a lonelier road. Discover the who of you. That journey is the best quest. Finally, Blake. Coach reminds me I'll be stuck in a do-nothing job unless I win one of the basketball scholarships we're all after. Would steroids multiply the effects of my striving? I consider giving them a try, but cheating is not for the champions. I'd rather pass the test for the strongest, the fastest, top-notch version of me. Then I'll truly be one of the best. That's it. I love this poem because I love how she takes so many different people and we can predict or infer their race based on their name and what they say, but you don't really know. And all you know is that they have these ideas in their head and they're angry about them and they're mad that because of who they are, their gender, their race, that society doesn't want them to be. So, like, for example, Helena, she wants to be a marine biologist, but people think that she couldn't be one because of who she is. And she tells them, I love this one. They tell me I should squeeze my hopes into a miniature box of their design. And it's just, it brings it all to light for me. It's very good. And like for Dina, not a lot of people talk about dyslexia as like boldly as she does, and how people think that people with dyslexia are stupid, but in fact they have a disorder where they physically and mentally cannot read or comprehend text the way that we, like, typical people can, and how that shouldn't be make her deemed stupid. So I love this, and for this particular poem, there are characters such as Jamar, Dina, Helena, Damien, Cora, and Blake. But in the other poem, it talks about a sister who has lost her brother in death. You can assume that it's because he was a soldier, but we don't know for sure. That could be a metaphor. So I love this poem in particular, and it challenges stereotypes and it confronts them. So it confronts them like, hey, you don't think I can be a marine biologist because of my race or gender, but I'm not going to let that stop me. So all of these poems have a sort of, this is what you think, but this is what's going to happen. Like a take charge, take control kind of mentality, which is common throughout the whole book. Last question. How does this book provide a platform for opening up critical conversations about any of the following? Discrimination, overcoming obstacles, survival, activism, and the promise of freedom and justice for all. So these poems, almost all of them talk about discrimination of some sort, whether it be reading disabilities, jobs, gender, race, you name it, and how they overcome obstacles mainly through support with each other and also through a mindset and a mentality of keep going, don't let people get you down, keep working at it, and you'll get there. And I love it. It's like a mindset that everyone should have. It's like growth mindset. I don't know that yet. I haven't done this yet, but I will get there. And I love, this would be a great book to talk about growth mindset now, in all actuality. Survival, for example, in Mother to Son, when she talks about how she's surviving, even though the stair doesn't have carpet, it has pins and tacks, it has splinters. She survives no matter what life throws at her, and she wants her son to have that same mentality. Activism, it clearly states the challenge, the discrimination, the oppression. It states how they are going to overcome it, and it challenges it in a way. It challenges it, stating like, why do you think this about me when you don't even know me? And so it's kind of supporting this like support mentality, like to challenge people to support one another no matter what. And the promise of freedom and justice for all, it kind of questions it. It doesn't really say like, oh, we have this now because we are free. It kind of is like, where is the freedom and justice for all people? So this book is just a fantastic book. Would be a great poem to teach, or book to teach Golden Shovel poetry, and just the civil rights movement in general. It would be great to have discussions about the Harlem Renaissance and maybe pull in your music and or art teacher to get them to help you with this, because the Harlem Renaissance is not only writing, it's also drawing, it's also music, singing, dancing, so much. And this book would be great to talk about with just a whole civil rights movement. I would highly recommend this book as a text set with the Parker Inheritance, the Separate is Never Equal, the book that I talked about, the refugee book, so A Crack in the Sea. It all ties in. Stormy Seas, Freedom Over Me, every book almost so far that talks about discrimination and the civil rights movement, anything. It could all be linked together and could be a whole unit that you could pull in. And the sky is the limit with this. There are so many mentor texts, so many lessons you could do. Please, please, please read my other blogs and learn more about those. Please go to the resource pages. There are so many things that could help you create a lesson plan revolving around civil rights movement, discrimination, all things that really, really need to be talked about in our society, so that you don't have parents or your children grow up to be my parents and ask who Langston Hughes is, because he's amazing. That is my last word. One last word. So please enjoy. Please check it out. Thank you for listening.